Before the days of Adam, even before the divine breath gave form to the first man, there were secrets between heaven and earth that have never been told. You are about to learn a hidden story, erased from the altars and silenced for generations. Because if it were true, everything we believe about the beginning of humanity would be called into question. Who were the beings who descended from above? What happened when they defied the Creator and crossed the boundaries of the invisible? Today, we will reveal the forbidden children of heaven and earth, those who were called the Nephilim. If this topic already moves you, then leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell. This helps us to take this truth further and further. And comment below, have you ever heard of the Nephilim? Let's discover together what has been hidden from humanity for millennia. Why does Genesis mention these giants briefly and then go silent? Why do other texts, such as the Book of Enoch, describe them in such detail, and yet they were left out of the Bible? If the Nephilim were just a metaphor, why would God be so enraged that he wiped out all of humanity in a flood? The answer may lie in a behind-the-scenes rebellion in heaven, not just against God, but against creation itself. They didn't just come to watch, they took women, they produced offspring, and they defiled the earth. According to Genesis 6:1-4, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. But who were these sons of God? The earliest Hebrew tradition, as well as the Book of Enoch, identifies them as fallen angels, heavenly beings who descended to Mount Hermon in a dark pact to defy divine order. They did not want just knowledge, they wanted to experience earthly pleasure, the flesh, dominion, and in doing so, they began a cycle of irreversible corruption. The fruit of this sin was not just symbolic, it was biological, physical, giant, powerful, violent. They were called Nephilim, a word that can mean the fallen ones, or those who make others fall. They belonged neither wholly to heaven nor to earth. They were hybrids, creatures of superhuman size, strength, and intelligence, but also of insatiable arrogance. They taught men war, sorcery, and destruction. And it was because of them that God declared, "My spirit shall not always abide with man." The earth quickly became a reflection of the corrupted heavens. The Nephilim established kingdoms, dominated men, and demanded to be worshipped as gods. Ancient accounts, such as the fragments of the Book of Jubilees and Sumerian traditions, tell of giants who devoured everything, including human beings. They not only corrupted creation, they took control of it. Men, fascinated by their strength and knowledge, began to imitate them, practicing rituals, sacrifices, and endless violence. It was as if hell had taken shape among the living. Adam's pure lineage was under threat. The Nephilim were growing rapidly, corrupting the blood, customs, and even the spiritual fabric of humanity. God, in his justice, saw that men's thoughts were continually evil. The world was no longer what he had called very good, so the decree came: destroy everything, not out of cruelty but out of mercy. The flood was not just a judgment, it was a cleansing, an attempt to start over before there was no turning back. But something escaped. The seed of the Nephilim was not completely destroyed. There are clues to this in the words describing the post-flood people, and also afterward. In Numbers 13, the spies sent into the Promised Land report seeing giants, the descendants of Anak, who come from the Nephilim. How could they still exist if they were all wiped out by the flood? The answer haunts scholars to this day. Either there was a second incursion by the fallen angels, or something survived. A lineage, a covenant, a mystery kept hidden in the shadows. Their presence continues to echo throughout human history. Many scholars believe that mythologies of giants in many cultures, such as the Greek Titans, the Anunnaki of Mesopotamia, the Norse gods, are distorted echoes of the same truth. Beings who came from on high, mated with women of the earth, and gave birth to monsters. What if all these accounts are simply local interpretations of the same cosmic event? What if the Nephilim really did reign over the earth, and their memory has been masked as legend? The Bible may seem silent, but between the lines there are echoes of this forbidden story. Job 1 calls the sons of God heavenly beings who presented themselves before the Lord. Jude 1:6 speaks of angels who did not keep their original estate and were chained until the final judgment. Peter mentions that God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them into hell, into chains of darkness. All of these fragments point to the same rebellion, a violation of heavenly orders that triggered the greatest contamination of the earth before the apocalypse. The Book of Enoch describes in horrifying detail how fallen angels, led by a being named Semjaza, came down to earth, took human wives, and taught men forbidden secrets: astrology, magic, warfare, cosmetics, sorcery, alchemy, and enchantments. It was as if the doors of spiritual knowledge had been opened before their time, and the price for this was chaos. The children born of this union had no souls like humans. They were machines of destruction, devouring men and each other. The consequence was a total distortion of the physical and spiritual world. The balance was broken. Even after they died, the spirits of the Nephilim, according to Enoch, did not return to heaven or to Sheol. They remained wandering the earth like demons, wandering spirits, seeking bodies to possess, perpetuating their anger, their hunger, and their revenge. This would completely change the way we understand the origin of evil. Perhaps the demons that Jesus cast out were not fallen angels, but rather the spirits of the Nephilim, bastard children of heaven and earth. This detail changes everything. While the fallen angels were imprisoned, their children, without place or identity, continued among us. This would explain why so many ancient cultures speak of possessions, evil spirits, and wandering entities, not as metaphors, but as survivors of a bygone era. This also connects the ancient world to our own time, a direct line of spiritual corruption that spans millennia and still influences dreams, thoughts, religions, and entire nations. They have never completely left the world. Geography also speaks volumes. Mount Hermon, the place where the fallen angels descended according to the Book of Enoch, is still a region shrouded in mystery. Located between Israel, Syria, and Lebanon, it is home to centuries of conflict, spiritual disputes, and inexplicable signs. Interestingly, Jesus chose this region to make one of the most impactful statements in history: "The gates of hell shall not prevail." Was it just a coincidence, or was Christ referring directly to the pact made there by the Watchers? Ancient Jews believed that this region was one of the most dangerous spiritual gateways in the world. The very term gates of hell may indicate a dimensional portal opened by the transgression of angels and sealed only by divine order. What if many of the spiritual conflicts that have spanned millennia originate there? What if the visible wars that occur in the Middle East are merely reflections of an invisible war begun when the sons of heaven decided to possess the daughters of earth? Even the giants who appeared centuries later carry this legacy. Goliath, for example, was not just a Philistine warrior. He came from Gath, one of the cities of the Anakim, direct descendants of the Nephilim according to biblical texts. The fear he caused was not only due to his size, but also due to his spiritual lineage. By defeating him, David not only won a physical battle, but sealed a confrontation between two lineages, the lineage chosen by God against the descendants of the fallen. But the most disturbing part is yet to come. Many scholars believe that the Nephilim's plan has not been interrupted, but merely postponed. Daniel's prophecy speaks of a time when they shall mingle with the offspring of men, but they shall not unite. Could this be a new attempt at hybridization? In Matthew 24, Jesus states that the last days will be like the times of Noah, and Noah's context was precisely the Nephilim's dominion over the earth. In other words, history is not just repeating itself. It may be approaching its final climax. There's a reason Jesus specifically mentioned the days of Noah when he spoke of the end times. It wasn't a random reference. He knew that at that time the earth was corrupted by a hybrid presence, a type of evil that couldn't be overcome by repentance or sacrifice alone. It needed a new beginning. The same threat looms today, but in a different guise. It's no longer giants with swords, but ideas, technologies, genetic manipulations, promises of transcendence without God. The advancement of modern science, especially in genetic engineering, artificial intelligence and DNA manipulation, raises suspicions among theologians and scholars. Many see in this an echo of the ancient corruption of the Nephilim. After all, isn't this the essence of the original sin of these beings? Crossing barriers that God established, creating life outside of the divine plan. What was done by fallen angels in the past is now reproduced by men in laboratories. And once again, a new generation is being sown that does not entirely belong to the original creation. What if the Nephilim had never really disappeared, but had merely been silenced? What if, through hidden bloodlines, secret orders, and preserved knowledge, their influence still shaped empires, twisted religions, and systems of power? Texts like Enoch tell of leaders who learned from the Watchers and perpetuated their teachings. Could this be why so many ancient civilizations worship giant hybrid gods who looked like animals and men and demanded blood sacrifices? There is a pattern that repeats itself. Every time man comes too close to crossing the boundaries of heaven, something happens. A disruption, a judgment. It was so at the Tower of Babel, in Sodom, and in Noah's world. What if we are approaching the next frontier? The signs seem clear to those who observe with discernment. The merging of the spiritual and the biotechnological is underway, and Christ's warning remains. Watch, for those who have come before may be ready to return. The current battle is not just for flesh and earth, it is for souls. The Nephilim, or at least their spirits, operate wherever there is spiritual space to corrupt, seduce, and influence. The Bible speaks of principalities and powers in the heavenly places, suggesting that there are evil orders at work. What if many of these principalities are actually remnants of the ancient rebellion of the fallen children? Entities with ancient memories, anger, and agendas, now disguised under the cloak of ideologies, distorted religions, and even cultural movements. They do not appear as monsters. They appear as light, as superior wisdom, as limitless progress. Just as they deceived in the past, today they continue to offer forbidden knowledge, but under another name: absolute freedom, autonomy over the body, over life, over creation. But all knowledge that denies God's sovereignty carries within itself the seed of destruction. The same cycle of Genesis 6 repeats itself with different faces, but with the same essence, challenging divine limits and trying to create a new order. The Apostle Paul warned that even Satan masquerades as an angel of light. What can we say then about his spiritual descendants? Those who were born from the union between the rebellious heaven and the seduced earth. These beings were banished from the sacred text, but not from the spiritual realm. Their mention is avoided, their existence denied, precisely because their greatest triumph is to act in the shadows. And like all good deception, it grows stronger in ignorance. What is not revealed continues to influence. Silence is the shield of these beings. But there are a people who will not be deceived. There are those who have eyes to see beyond the veil, who discern the signs of the times, who understand that the past is not dead, only asleep, and when they awaken, the children of darkness will have to face something they did not expect, a generation that knows the truth, that knows who the real enemies are, and that will not be manipulated by the lies of old. Because where there is light, darkness cannot remain. The return of the Nephilim may not be with gigantic bodies as before, but with global influence. Many scholars see traces of the ancient doctrines of the fallen in the world's elites, in occult systems of government, and even in certain modern spiritual movements. It is no longer necessary to descend from heaven to dominate. It is enough to control thought, desire, and redefine what is true. The same corruption that began in Eden now infiltrates algorithms, schools, and churches, and few notice. Scripture says there will come a time of great deception, which, if possible, will deceive even the elect. This is the essence of the Nephilim's strategy, not to create terror, but to create enchantment, to make error desirable, sin acceptable, rebellion normal. Just as Eve was seduced by the promise of being like God, millions continue to be lured by the same words, by ways that seem right, but lead to death. The spirit of the Nephilim is the spirit of disobedience disguised as freedom. Understanding the past is therefore not just a theological exercise, it is an act of spiritual warfare. Knowing who these beings were, what they did, and why they were judged prepares us to confront their influence in the present day. The history of the Nephilim is the spiritual skeleton behind many of the evils taking shape today. They are the backstage of the apocalypse, the harbingers of a new attempt at total domination, and they are active, although invisible to most. But there is hope. Just as God purified the world in the past, He has already prepared a final judgment to end all corruption. The fallen angels will be judged. His spiritual children will be destroyed, and all those who hid in darkness will be exposed to eternal light. But until that day comes, we must watch, be alert, know the signs, because the next battle will not be against giants of flesh, but against giants of influence. And this war has already begun. The Bible calls us the temple of the Holy Spirit. But if human bodies are spiritual dwelling places, that also explains why the Nephilim, whose spirits have wandered, are constantly seeking a place to dwell. They long for bodies, for influence, for open doors. Jesus spoke of unclean spirits that come out of a man and, finding no rest, return with worse ones. This is more than a metaphor. It is a spiritual pattern inherited from the days of the giants. This is why there is so much attack on identity, on the body, on the family. These are the foundations of the original creation that the Nephilim have tried to destroy from the beginning. They know that if they destroy what God has called good, they open the way for their own nature to dominate. Every time man abandons the divine principles, he becomes vulnerable, and the spirit of the fallen ancients manifests itself in new forms: despair, confusion, idolatry, perversion. But there is armor. Paul described the spiritual weapons: helmet of salvation, shield of faith, sword of the Spirit. This is not poetry, it is war strategy. Because the same God who cast out the fallen, who sealed the gates, who sent the flood, is the same God who will raise up his children at the end of time. The Nephilim may have had power, but the children of God have authority, and that authority comes from the truth, the blood of the Lamb, and the Spirit who dwells in those who believe. And when the trumpet sounds, no giant will stand, no cursed lineage will remain. Every structure built by rebellion will be undone, for there is a judgment prepared not only for men, but for angels as well. And those who once corrupted the world will now see justice restored. The kingdom that the Nephilim tried to imitate will be established in glory, and they will finally be erased forever from the creation they dared to pervert. Masks and lies will be unmasked before the throne of the Most High. The heavenly records have not been erased. Every pact made, every soul corrupted, every drop of blood spilled, all will be remembered. And before the light of God, there will be no more room for the secrets of the Nephilim. The time of silence will end. And with it, the era of the influence of the fallen. This is why the church cannot sleep. God's children need to wake up. To know what came before is to understand what is to come. Because the final battle will not be won by strength or intelligence, but by discernment and obedience. It is not a matter of fearing the Nephilim, but of recognizing that their spirits still war for influence, and that our resistance lies in living according to the Word. History was given to us so that we do not repeat the mistake of Eden, trading the truth for a seductive promise. Every time a child of God stands forth in holiness, a link of the old dominion is broken. Every soul that chooses the light weakens the darkness. Every time the truth is proclaimed, the memory of the Nephilim is shattered. For they no longer have authority, only illusion. And when the bride of Christ is ready, pure and full of discernment, then there will be no more room for rebellious spirits. Heaven will descend, the throne will be restored, and creation will return to its original purpose. And if this truth burns in your heart, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. And now we have a members area. By becoming a member, you bless this work and help us to continue producing edifying and revealing content like this. Just click on the Become a Member button below, next to the Subscribe button. Be a part of this. Share this video with someone who needs to wake up, because the forbidden children of heaven and earth can no longer remain in control of history.